Welcome to my channel. If you love rare coins, valuable era coins, and hidden treasures still found in circulation, you are in the right place. Today's video is very special because we are exploring 4 United States half-dollar coins that many people overlook, but collectors know their real importance. These coins may look common at first glance, yet some examples can be worth far more than face value, depending on condition, minting quality, and rare varieties. So watch this video carefully till the end, because one of these half-dollars might already be in your collection. Let's start with the 1971 half-dollar. The 1971 half-dollar coin is an important and interesting piece in United States numismatic history because it represents a major transition period for American coinage, especially for the half-dollar denomination. By 1971, the United States had fully moved away from circulating silver coinage for half-dollars, and the Kennedy half-dollar had entered a new era made entirely for circulation, using a copper-nickel clad composition. This year stands as a bridge between the emotional legacy of President John F. Kennedy and the practical realities of modern coin production, inflation, metal shortages, and changing public attitudes toward coin collecting and saving. The half-dollar itself has a long history in the United States, dating back to the late 18th century. Traditionally, half-dollars were widely used in commerce, especially for larger transactions. However, by the time the Kennedy half-dollar was introduced in 1964, the role of the half-dollar in everyday transactions was already beginning to decline. The assassination of President John F. Kennedy in November 1963 shocked the nation, and almost immediately there was strong public and political support to honor him on a circulating coin. The half-dollar was chosen, replacing the long-running Franklin half-dollar. The first Kennedy half-dollars were struck in 90% silver in 1964 and were heavily hoarded by the public as keepsakes and memorial items. In the years that followed, the U.S. Mint gradually reduced the silver content of the half-dollar. From 1965 through 1970, Kennedy half-dollars were struck in a reduced silver composition of 40% silver. Even these coins were widely saved and removed from circulation, contributing to shortages and reduced public use of the denomination. By 1971, the Mint made a decisive change. The Kennedy half-dollar would no longer contain any silver for regular circulation strikes. This decision aligned the half-dollar with the composition already used for dimes and quarters, which since 1965 had been struck in a copper-nickel clad format. The 1971 half-dollar was therefore the first Kennedy half-dollar intended for circulation that contained no silver at all. Its composition consists of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. This gave the coin a silvery appearance while significantly reducing production costs and discouraging hoarding based on metal value. The coin has a diameter of 30.6 millimeters and a weight of 11.34 grams, specifications that were carried over from earlier Kennedy half-dollars to maintain consistency and compatibility with vending machines and coin handling equipment. The obverse of the 1971 half-dollar features a familiar left-facing portrait of President John F. Kennedy, designed by Gilroy Roberts, who served as the chief engraver of the United States Mint at the time the design was created. Kennedy's portrait is dignified and realistic, capturing the youthful strength and calm confidence that many Americans associated with him. The word liberty arcs around the upper edge of the coin, while the national motto, "In God We Trust," is placed below Kennedy's chin. The date 1971 appears at the bottom. The overall design is clean and uncluttered, emphasizing respect and solemnity rather than excessive ornamentation. The reverse of the coin was designed by Frank Gasparo, who later became chief engraver of the U.S. Mint. It features a heraldic eagle with outstretched wings, holding an olive branch in its talons. A shield covers the eagle's chest, symbolizing strength and protection. Above the eagle is a ring of stars, representing the States of the Union, and a burst of rays. The inscriptions United States of America and half-dollar surround the design, while the national motto, E Pluribus Unum, appears above the eagle. This reverse design was inherited from the presidential seal and had already become familiar to Americans through earlier Kennedy half-dollars. In 1971, half-dollars were struck at 2 different mint facilities. Coins struck at the Philadelphia Mint bear no mint mark, while those struck at the Denver Mint carry a small D mint mark on the obverse, located just above the date. There were no regular circulation half-dollars struck at the San Francisco Mint in 1971, although special collector versions were produced later in the decade at that facility. The mintage numbers for the 1971 half-dollar reflect both the reduced demand for the denomination and the Mint's cautious approach during this transition period. Approximately 155 million half-dollars were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, while about 302 million were produced at the Denver Mint. These numbers are relatively high, especially compared to later years, but despite this, the coins did not circulate heavily. Many Americans continue to save Kennedy half-dollars out of sentiment, habit, or misunderstanding about their metal content, even though the 1971 coins contain no silver. Because the 1971 half-dollar contains no precious metal, its value today in circulated condition is generally close to its face value. Most circulated examples are worth 50 cents to slightly more, depending on condition. In uncirculated condition, especially coins with strong luster, sharp details, and minimal contact marks, values can be higher. Coins graded by professional grading services in high mint state grades, such as MS-65 or above, can command premiums from collectors who seek high-quality examples for registry sets or collections of Kennedy half-dollars by date and mint. One important aspect of the 1971 half-dollar for collectors is strike quality. Many coins from this period, particularly from the Denver Mint, show relatively soft strikes in certain areas, such as Kennedy's hair above the ear or the eagle's feathers on the reverse. Coins with strong, full strikes are more desirable and can be worth more than typical examples. Luster is another key factor, as coins with bright, original mint luster are more attractive and collectible. Private collections, or rolls held by collectors and investors. For imagery and symbolism, reinforcing continuity and stability during a time of change, while later meaningful addition to any collection. Over time, interest in Kennedy half-dollars has remained strong, driven by nostalgia, historical interest, and the challenge of assembling complete sets in high grade. The 1971 issue, as the starting point of the clad era, occupies a special place within that series. It represents both an ending and a beginning, the end of silver in circulating half-dollars, and the beginning of a new chapter in modern U.S. coinage. Next is the 1974 half-dollar, another coin that many people spend without realizing its collector appeal. The 1974 half-dollar coin is part of the long-running Kennedy half-dollar series and represents an important stage in the evolution of modern United States coinage. By 1974, the Kennedy half-dollar had already been in circulation for a full decade, and although it was still officially a circulating denomination, its everyday use had declined sharply. This coin reflects the economic realities, public attitudes, and minting practices of the mid-1970s, making it an interesting and meaningful piece for collectors and historians alike. The Kennedy half-dollar was first introduced in 1964 as a tribute to President John F. Kennedy following his assassination in November 1963. The public response to the coin was immediate and emotional. Millions of Americans saved the early issues as memorials, especially the 1964 coin struck in 90% silver. Even after the silver content was reduced to 40% from 1965 through 1970, the coins continued to be hoarded. By the time 1971 arrived and silver was completely removed from the half-dollar, the denomination had already largely disappeared from everyday commerce. The 1974 half-dollar exists firmly within this non-silver, modern era of the series. The 1974 half-dollar is composed of a copper-nickel clad structure. Its outer layers consist of 75% copper and 25% nickel, bonded to a pure copper core. This composition gives the coin a bright, silvery appearance while keeping production costs low and eliminating any intrinsic precious metal value. The coin weighs 11.34 grams and has a diameter of 30.6 millimeters, dimensions that remain unchanged from earlier Kennedy half-dollars to maintain consistency across the series. The obverse of the 1974 half-dollar features the well-known left-facing portrait of President John F. Kennedy. The design was created by Gilroy Roberts, the chief engraver of the United States Mint at the time of the coin's introduction. Kennedy's portrait is realistic and dignified, emphasizing strong facial features and a calm expression. The word liberty curves along the upper edge of the coin, while the national motto, "In God We Trust," appears below Kennedy's chin. The date 1974 is positioned at the bottom of the obverse. The overall look is clean and balanced, continuing the respectful tone established when the design was first introduced. The reverse of the 1974 half dollar was designed by Frank Gasparo, who later became chief engraver of the U.S. Mint. It features a heraldic eagle with wings spread wide, holding an olive branch in its talons. A shield covers the eagle's chest, symbolizing strength and national defense. Above the eagle is a cluster of stars representing the states, along with rays that suggest unity and power. The inscriptions United States of America in half dollars surround the design, while the motto E Pluribus Unum appears above the eagle. This reverse design is based on the presidential seal and reinforces the authority and continuity of the American government. In 1974, Kennedy half dollars were struck at 2 U.S. Mint facilities. Coins produced at the Philadelphia Mint carry no mint mark, while those struck at the Denver Mint feature a small demint mark on the obverse, just above the date. The San Francisco Mint did not produce regular circulation half dollars in 1974, as its role had shifted primarily to proof coinage for collectors. The mintage figures for the 1974 half dollar reflect the Mint's attempt to balance production with declining public demand. Approximately 201 million coins were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, while about 79 million were produced at the Denver Mint. Although these numbers may seem high, the reality is that many of these coins never circulated widely. Large quantities were stored by banks or saved by individuals who continued the habit of holding onto Kennedy half dollars, even though they no longer contained silver. From a value standpoint, the 1974 half dollar is generally considered a common coin. In circulated condition, most examples are worth close to their face value of 50 cents. Because the coin contains no silver, there is no bullion premium attached to it. However, condition plays an important role in determining value. Uncirculated examples with strong luster, clean surfaces, and minimal contact marks can be worth more than face value, especially if they grade MS-65 or higher by professional grading services. Collectors pay close attention to strike quality on 1974 half dollars. Some coins from this period show weak strikes, particularly in areas such as Kennedy's hair above the ear and the eagle's feather details on the reverse. Well-struck coins with sharp details are more desirable and often command higher prices. Luster is another important factor, as bright, original mint luster greatly enhances eye appeal. Error coins and varieties also add interest to the 1974 half dollar. While no major, widely recognized varieties define this date, collectors still search for double dies, off-center strikes, clip planchets, and other mint errors. Genuine mint errors can be valuable, depending on their rarity and visual impact. As always, collectors must be careful to distinguish true mint errors from post-mint damage, which does not add value. The historical context of the 1974 half dollar is closely tied to the broader economic and social environment of the United States during the mid-1970s. This was a time marked by high inflation, rising energy costs, and public uncertainty following events such as the Watergate scandal and the resignation of President Richard Nixon in 1974. These conditions influenced public trust in institutions and shaped attitudes toward money and savings. Coinage during this period reflects a shift away from intrinsic metal value toward purely fiat currency, with emphasis on efficiency and cost control. Despite being officially a circulating coin, the 1974 half dollar was rarely used in everyday transactions. Many businesses did not accept or dispense half dollars, and vending machines were often not designed to handle them. As a result, the denomination continued its gradual slide into obscurity. Today, half dollars are still produced by the U.S. Mint, but primarily for collectors rather than for general circulation, a trend that was already well underway by 1974. For collectors, the 1974 half dollar serves as a representative example of the clad era of Kennedy coinage. It is often included in date and mint sets and is accessible to collectors of all experience levels due to its affordability and availability. While it may not be rare or highly valuable, it plays an important role in telling complete story of the recommended to avoid fingerprints and wear. Although the 1974 half dollar may not attract attention for its monetary worth, its significance lies in its historical and cultural context. It represents a period when American coinage had fully transitioned away from precious metals and when public habits regarding money were changing. It also reflects a decline of the half dollar as a practical denomination, even as its symbolic value remains strong. Now let's move to the 1980 D half dollar, struck at the Denver Mint. The 1980 D half dollar coin is part of the Kennedy half dollar series and represents a later chapter in the modern history of United States coinage, a time when a half dollar was no longer a familiar sight in everyday transactions. By 1980, the Kennedy half dollar had been in circulation for more than 15 years, yet its role had changed significantly from a commonly used coin to one that was largely set aside by the public. The 1980 D half dollar reflects not only the technical aspects of U.S. mint production during this period, but also broader economic conditions and changing public behavior toward money. The Kennedy half dollar was first issued in 1964 to honor President John F. Kennedy following his assassination in 1963. The initial release of the coin struck a deep emotional chord with the American public. Early issues were made of silver and were widely saved as memorials. Even after the silver content was reduced and then eliminated entirely by 1971, many people continued to hold on to Kennedy half dollars. As a result, the denomination gradually disappeared from regular commerce. By the time the 1980 D half dollar was produced, it was already uncommon to receive a half dollar in change, despite the coin still being officially issued for circulation. The 1980 D half dollar is composed of a copper-nickel-clad structure. The outer layers consist of 75% copper and 25% nickel, bonded to a core of pure copper. This composition had been standard for circulating Kennedy half dollars since 1971 and was chosen for durability, cost efficiency, and compatibility with vending and counting machines. The coin weighs 11.34 grams and measures 30.6 millimeters in diameter, dimensions that remain consistent throughout the Kennedy half dollar series to ensure uniformity. The obverse of the 1980 D half dollar features the familiar left-facing portrait of President John F. Kennedy, designed by Gilroy Roberts. Kennedy's image is strong and dignified, reflecting the respect and admiration many Americans still felt for him nearly 2 decades after his death. The word liberty curves along the upper rim of the coin, while the national motto, "In God We Trust," is placed below Kennedy's chin. The date 1980 appears at the bottom of the obverse. Just above the date is the D mint mark, indicating that the coin was struck at the Denver Mint. The reverse of the coin, designed by Frank Gasparo, displays a heraldic eagle with wings spread wide. The eagle holds an olive branch, symbolizing peace, while a shield rests on its chest, representing strength and defense. Above the eagle is a ring of stars, representing the states of the Union, along with rays that suggest unity and national power. The inscriptions United States of America and half dollar encircle the design, and the motto E Pluribus Unum appears above the eagle. This reverse design, based on the presidential seal, reinforces the authority and continuity of the nation. The 1980 D half dollar was produced at a time of significant economic stress in the United States. The late 1970s and early 1980s were marked by high inflation, rising interest rates, and economic uncertainty. Metal prices, particularly copper and nickel, experienced fluctuations that affected coin production costs. Despite these challenges, the U.S. Mint continued to produce half dollars, even though public demand for the denomination was very low. Mintage figures for the 1980 D half dollar reflect this reduced demand. Approximately 35.5 million coins were struck at the Denver Mint. This was a relatively modest mintage compared to earlier years in the series, especially those in the 1970s when production numbers were much higher. Even so, many of these coins did not circulate widely and instead remain in storage or were saved by collectors and the general public. In terms of value, the 1980 D half dollar is generally considered a common coin. In circulated condition, most examples are worth close to their face value of 50 cents. Because the coin contains no silver or other precious metals, it does not carry any intrinsic bullion value. Uncirculated examples, particularly those with strong luster and minimal contact marks, can be worth slightly more than face value. Coins that achieve higher mint state grades, such as MS-65 or above, may command a premium among collectors who specialize in high-grade modern coinage. Collectors often pay attention to strike quality when evaluating 1980D half dollars. Some coins from this period show weak strikes in areas such as Kennedy's hair and the eagle's feather details on the reverse. Coins with sharp, well-defined details are more desirable. Luster is another important factor, as original mint luster enhances eye appeal and collectability. Toning, when natural and attractive, can also add interest, though excessive discoloration or spotting may reduce value. The 1980D half dollar is also of interest to collectors who focus on mint marks. Denver minted coins often display slightly different characteristics compared to those struck at Philadelphia, including variations in strike strength and surface texture. For collectors assembling date and mint sets of Kennedy half dollars, the 1980D is an essential component, even though it is not rare. Error coins add another layer of interest to this issue. While no famous major varieties define the 1980D half dollar, collectors occasionally encounter examples with minting errors, such as off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or double dies. Genuine mint errors can be valuable, depending on their visibility and rarity. However, collectors must be cautious and knowledgeable, as damage caused after minting is often mistaken for a true error. By 1980, the half dollar had largely lost its role as a circulating coin. Many businesses no longer use half dollars in cash drawers, and vending machines were often not designed to accept them. Banks typically did not distribute half dollars unless customers specifically requested them. As a result, large numbers of coins like the 1980D half dollar remain in bags or rolls in bank vaults, or were sold to collectors in later years. From a historical perspective, the 1980D half dollar represents the normalization of the Kennedy design in a period when it had become more symbolic than practical. The coin no longer carried the emotional impact it had in the 1960s, yet it continued to serve as a reminder of President Kennedy's legacy. Its continued production demonstrates the U.S. Mint's commitment to maintaining traditional denominations, even as their usage declined. For collectors, the 1980D half dollar is an accessible and affordable coin that offers insight into the economic and cultural environment of its time. It illustrates how changing public behavior, economic pressures, and production decisions can influence the role of a coin in everyday life. While it may not be a centerpiece of a high-value collection, it plays an important supporting role in telling the full story of modern American coinage. Proper storage and handling are important for preserving the condition of a 1980D half dollar. Coins should be kept in protective holders made from inert materials to prevent scratches, corrosion, or discoloration. Handling coins by the edges and avoiding direct contact with the surfaces helps maintain their original appearance and value. Finally, we have the 1997 P half dollar, minted in Philadelphia. The 1997 P half dollar coin belongs to the Kennedy half dollar series and represents a very late stage in the history of this iconic American denomination. By 1997, the half dollar was no longer produced for general circulation in large quantities, and its role in everyday commerce had almost completely disappeared. The 1997 P half dollar is therefore best understood as a coin created primarily for collectors and institutional needs rather than for daily use by the public. Despite this, it remains an important piece for understanding how U.S. coinage evolved in the late 20th century. The Kennedy half dollar was first introduced in 1964, shortly after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. From the beginning, the coin carried deep emotional and symbolic meaning for Americans. Early issues were struck in silver and were heavily saved as memorials. Even after the silver content was reduced and eventually eliminated by 1971, the habit of saving Kennedy half dollars continued. Over time, this behavior contributed to the denomination's steady disappearance from circulation. By the 1990s, half dollars were rarely seen in everyday transactions, and many people were unaware that they were still being produced at all. The 1997 p half dollar is made of a copper-nickel clad composition. Its outer layers consist of 75% copper and 25% nickel, bonded to a core of pure copper. This composition had been standard for circulating Kennedy half dollars since 1971 and reflects the broader shift in U.S. coinage away from precious metals. The coin has a diameter of 30.6 millimeters and weighs 11.34 grams, maintaining the traditional size and weight of the series. The obverse of the 1997 p half dollar features the familiar left-facing portrait of President John F. Kennedy, designed by Gilroy Roberts. Kennedy's image remains strong and dignified, continuing the design that has appeared on the coin since its introduction. The word Liberty curves along the top edge of the coin, while the motto "In God We Trust" appears beneath Kennedy's chin. The date, 1997, is located at the bottom of the obverse. Just above the date is the P mint mark, indicating that the coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. The inclusion of a P mint mark reflects changes in minting practices that began in the late 20th century, when Philadelphia started placing mint marks on most circulating coins. The reverse of the 1997 p half dollar was designed by Frank Gasparo and features a heraldic eagle with outstretched wings. The eagle holds an olive branch, symbolizing peace, and a shield rests on its chest, representing national strength and defense. Above the eagle is a cluster of stars representing the states of the Union, along with rays that suggest unity and continuity. The inscriptions United States of America and half dollar surround the design, and the motto E Pluribus Unum appears above the eagle. This reverse design, based on the presidential seal, reinforces the official and symbolic nature of the coin. One of the most significant aspects of the 1997 p half dollar is its method of distribution. Unlike earlier decades, when half dollars were routinely released into circulation, most 1997 half dollars were not widely distributed for everyday use. Instead, they were primarily sold by the U.S. Mint in bags and rolls directly to collectors. While some examples did enter circulation, they were relatively uncommon, and many Americans have never encountered a 1997 half dollar in daily transactions. The mintage of the 1997 p half dollar reflects this collector-focused approach. Approximately 2.8 million coins were struck at the Philadelphia Mint. This is a very low mintage compared to earlier Kennedy half dollars, which were often produced in the tens or hundreds of millions. Despite the low mintage, the coin is not considered rare in the traditional sense because a large percentage of the coins were preserved in uncirculated condition by collectors. In terms of value, the 1997 p half dollar typically sells for more than face value, especially in uncirculated condition. Circulated examples, when found, may be worth slightly more than 50 cents due to their relative scarcity in circulation. Uncirculated coins often command a modest premium, particularly if they retain strong luster and clean surfaces. Coins graded by professional grading services in high mint state grades can bring higher prices, especially among collectors who specialize in modern U.S. coinage or complete Kennedy half dollar sets. Strike quality on the 1997 p half dollar is generally good, reflecting improved minting technology and quality control by the late 1990s. Details in Kennedy's hair and facial features are usually sharp, and the eagle on the reverse often shows strong feather detail. Coins with exceptional strike, luster, and eye appeal are especially desirable, even within this relatively modern issue. The 1997 p half dollar also appeals to collectors because it represents a clear shift in how the U.S. Mint approached the half-dollar denomination. By this time, the Mint recognized that public demand for half dollars was minimal. Producing the coins primarily for collectors allowed the Mint to continue the series while avoiding the costs associated with producing large quantities of coins that would not circulate. This approach foreshadowed later decisions to strike half dollars almost exclusively for collector sale. From a historical perspective, the 1997 p half dollar reflects the changing relationship between Americans and physical money. By the late 1990s, electronic payments, credit cards, and debit cards were becoming increasingly common, reducing reliance on cash for everyday transactions. Large denominations like the half dollar became even less practical in this environment. The coin therefore stands as a symbol of a denomination that survived more for tradition and symbolism than for practical use. Error coins and varieties for the 1997p half dollar exist, but are relatively uncommon. Collectors occasionally find examples with minor minting errors, such as off-center strikes, die cracks, or planchet defects. Significant errors can add value, but as with all modern coins, careful authentication is important to distinguish genuine mint errors from post-mint damage. For collectors assembling a complete set of Kennedy half dollars, the 1997p is an essential and interesting date. Its low mintage, collector-focused distribution, and late position in the series make it stand out among modern issues. While it may not be rare or extremely valuable, it holds special significance as part of the transition toward non-circulating production. Proper storage is important for maintaining protective holders made from inert materials, away from moisture, heat, and direct handling. Even small scratches or fingerprints can significantly affect the appearance and value of a modern coin. All four of these half dollars show how even common-looking coins can have real collector value. Condition, mint marks, errors, and overall eye appeal play a huge role in determining worth. Before you spend or store your half dollars, always take a closer look. You never know what hidden treasure you might be holding. If you enjoyed this video and love learning about valuable coins, rare errors, and collector secrets, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next coin video.